Good afternoon, everyone. It is Monday, the 9th of November, and I am recording this session to answer some of the questions that I received by email from teachers. And I hope to meet you virtually um, on Wednesday. Okay, so let me share now my screen. So that you can see my oops, and then share. Okay, you can see what I have prepared. So my name is Emmanuela Bakola, and I'm an associate professor in ancient Greek language and literature. And I'm delighted to be in communication with you regarding teaching Greek theatre. I received some questions, and I'll be happy to receive more questions and do my best to assist you regarding the teaching of these wonderful plays. So starting with question one, are there any other visual sources aside from those on the prescribed sources packet and OCR textbook that would be useful as additional sources for Greek theatre? Is one question that I received, and a related question from a different party. The vase I find most obscure on the OCR specification is the pronomos vase. So any discussion of that would be most helpful. Now, okay, so in short, the answer to the first question is yes, hundreds. There are hundreds of vases that are relevant to our understanding of Greek drama and our understanding of the reception of Greek drama in the Greek world, not only in the mainland Greece, but also east and west of mainland Greece. They have been studied. They started being studied kind of systematically already in the 19th century. And most influentially, though, kind of the history of scholarship on Greek drama and its relationship to iconography was this book here, published in 1971 by Trendle and Webster, which is called rather naively now, Illustrations of Greek Drama. I mean, we do consider this approach to be a bit naive now, although I mean the book is valuable still. It's full of very kind of perceptive suggestions, but we don't anymore accept that vase paintings are direct illustrations of plays or play performances. That book exercised quite a significant influence in 1993, and the person who became kind of most associated with Greek drama in its relationship to iconography since is Oliver Taplin. He springs up everywhere, and with the book Comic Angels and Other Approaches to Greek Drama via vase painting. This book uses the iconography as evidence that old comedy and tragedy were performed outside Athens, as I said in the beginning of my answer, in the Greek West, as is the term that Oliver Taplin has coined to refer to South Italy and Sicily, in order to avoid the misconception that these areas are, and hence the production and the use and the purchase and the collection of vases in these areas is by non-Greek populations. Okay, so South Italy and Sicily had a lot of vibrant um, you know, very active, very creative, very rich, very kind of internationally minded colonies, and you know, kind of communities of, you know, Greek-speaking populations. And we have actually hundreds of vases that we found mainly in funerary context, so in tombs, from these areas, which can be related, and I will explain to you in what way, to Greek drama. So Oliver Tapping mentions, you know, hundreds of them, although he uses only a few as case studies, including this one that you see on the dust jacket of the book, the famous Koregoi vase, which includes the tragic character Aegisthus here. Now, this book was published in the wake of extremely significant publications, including by Oliver Taplin, on the so-called Würzburg Telephos vase. A vase with a painting. It's actually one of the OCR illustrations, OCR recommended illustrations for teachers and pupils, and you will recognize this is the vase, which in 1986 and 87 was studied, and very influential articles published by Eric Chapo and Oliver Taplin, that this vase, which was found in the Greek West, okay, so in South Italy, was, I mean, it produces with very striking accuracy a scene of Aristophanes' women at the Thesmophoria, Zeusi. I mean, down to kind of the mask, the kind of supposedly feminized mask of the tragic Telephos, who is the in-law disguised as a woman, here down to the wine sack with the booties, down to the member of the chorus who brings the bowl to catch the wine blood from the sacrifice. So, so this vase actually caused a stir. I mean, the publication of this vase caused a stir in 1996, because it was a clear evidence that Greek comedy was relevant to communities in the Greek West, in South Italy, and I mean, this is an amazing proposition if you think about it, because I mean, why would there be any reason for anybody to have this vase in their possession unless they could relate to it? This, of course, on its own, a vase is not on its own adequate evidence for this kind of very drastic proposition. However, this, as well as hundreds of other examples which were studied by Oliver Taplin and then published in this book, Comic Angels, suggest that this is actually a very plausible proposition. And actually, there were at the time, and they still are, two issues which are mainly discussed in relation to iconography and Greek tragedy and comedy. Okay, one of them, which I'm not going to go into very much, but it's actually quite significant, and I've implied very many times in positive terms in relation to this question: how far can we be confident that these vases are related to specific dramatic performances? Because if they are, we actually have to accept that there was a vibrant theater performance culture in the so-called Greek West. And this is absolutely possible. I mean, you will not find, as almost with with anything, you will not find two scholars who have exactly the same view on huge controversial issues like this. But generally, scholarship at the moment leans far more towards the possibility that there was a vibrant theatre performance culture in South Italy and Sicily by the 4th century. And also this is confirmed by not only by kind of vase paintings, but also by the presence of theaters and other material culture elements that we find in relation to vase performances, like, for example, souvenir statuettes. More importantly, the question is, in what way should we assume that these vase paintings are actually related to drama? Okay, and can we be sure? And what evidence do we have to be sure? What is our methodology to be sure? Now, extremely few, unfortunately, show a correspondence of detail as close as the vase that we just saw, the Würzburg Tillefers painting. And also, unfortunately, relatively few are also indisputably theater specific. Now, how can we tell if a vase painting is theater specific rather than includes the representation of a mythical scene or of a comic scene, or it is a representation of a parodic version of a myth? Well, I mean, the simple answer is, as Oliver Taplin and others, even before him, even we find that even in the previous book, The Illustrations of Greek Drama, is the presence of signals such as very clearly portrayed masks. So you can see here that there is a line under the chin of Aegisthus, which suggests that this is not meant to be understood as a mythical character, but rather as a person who is wearing a mask. Of course, you can see the stage platform, okay, and the theatrical door. I mean, of course, you can see the comic costume with the names, in this case, a chorus of sponsors. And of course, but I mean, this is kind of very clear as it is here, but it is not in every vase, and actually very relatively few are. Many more are so specific when they concern comedy. And think about it, that comedy is par excellence a meta-theatrical genre. So it acknowledges its presence, its status as theater. So a representation of comedy and the acknowledgement that this is theater shouldn't really, surprise us. However, so tragedy is less so, okay? So there are very few undoubtedly meta-theatrical passages and scenes in tragedy, or to put it a little bit more accurately and correctly, the meta-theatrical references within Greek tragedy are much more subtle. They're not as in your face as they are in tragedy, in comedy. So we shouldn't really, again, be surprised if we see illustrations that relate to Greek tragedy that are not explicitly in reference to the theater practice. But, and we will see a few of them, and you have actually a list of them in your OCR list. We have several from tragedy that that are openly related to theater practice. Okay, now before I get to the example of the Basel dancers, which is one of them, and actually it's a in a very many ways a unique example. I want us to follow through with the scholarship and say that at the moment, the place to go to for learning about the relationship of iconography to vase iconography to Greek theater and Greek theater performance is Oliver Taplin's, again, 2007 a beautiful book, Pots and Plays, Interactions Between Tragedy and Greek Vase Painting of the 4th century BC. This includes analysis and also images of several of the vase paintings that you have been given in the OCR list. Now, as I said, I'm happy to send you scanned copies of the relevant sections from this book, so long as it does not infringe copyright, as I will send you also a pack of other resources that you can use. Now, because I mean, I really like this book. It is written not only, I mean, not just in a scholarly way, but in a scholarly way, and at the same time very much accessible to kind of more general reading audience, including, I would say, pupils. So I would definitely recommend copies of this, of analysis of certain vases, or the introduction to be given to your pupils. And now going to, I mean, it does include, as I said, it does include most of the illustrations that you have in your OCR prescribed in the OCR list, including the Basel dancers. Now, the Basel dancers is not the illustration, is not a vase painting, is not a South Italian painting, and actually it is, I mean, it has been dated, and it is not from the 4th century, it has been dated to 490 to 480 BC, and it is one of the extremely few, and now this is now striking, the extremely few Athenian 5th century vase paintings, which are beyond doubt showing Athenian drama in performance. Okay, so I mentioned before that we have hundreds of paintings that relate to Greek tragedy and comedy from the 4th century, but we have only extremely few from the 5th century. Now, this is a mystery, of course. I mean, can you imagine that in a period, the 5th century, which is the golden period of Greek drama performance, okay, as if the 4th century wasn't, it was definitely the 4th century as well, but it was already a golden time in the 5th century. And it was a vibrant period for artistic production of, you know, vase paintings, as we know. So how come the two didn't meet as often as we expect, and suddenly we have this explosion in the 4th century? Now, it is a mystery, and some scholars have given explanations why this might be, but I mean, we're still not sure why this might be, and for now we're just mourning the fact that we don't have theater-specific illustration. Now, in this illustration, when I say, you know, theater-specific, now you will understand, as I mentioned before, that you mean that I mean a vase painting with elements that show that this is not a mythical or a ritual, or, I mean, although ritual also uses masks, but a mythical scene, but it is specifically a theatrical scene. For example, in this painting, we see the formation of the chorus in a dyads. Okay, so we have 6 chorus members, which I think easily are multiplied in our heads as viewers to 12, which is the standard number of tragic choruses as early in the 5th century. But of course, we have representation of masks, as we said. Plus, so it is a dancing and singing chorus. You can see the gestures of their hands as they are trying to raise an individual from a tomb, okay? A tomb which has been decorated with funeral ribbons, okay, funeral fillets. Now, the fact that this figure here that is shown as in the process of an anodos, so coming upwards from this tomb, the fact that this figure is much smaller than the other figures is precisely because this is the convention for the representation of eidola or apparitions or ghosts in Greek iconography. Now, this vase has been connected to Aeschylus's Persians, but I mean, there is a lot of things which do not fit. I mean, the costume is clearly non-foreign, whereas the chorus of Persians in Aeschylus's Persians are elder Persian men. Nevertheless, this scene evokes very, very closely the scene of the necromancy or of the calling upon the dead King Darius on stage, who at some point in the play actually does appear as an eidolon, as a ghost, as a dream as well, in front of the chorus and the queen. But it is not a representation of the Persians, but of course by now we know that we only have 2% from surviving from the total theater production of the 5th century, so we wouldn't be surprised if this is a representation of a play of another perhaps of another dramatist. Okay, so moving on. So this is one of the 5th century representations of kind of which are undoubtedly theatrical, and another one was found fairly recently in Crimea. Sorry, or is it now? I think no, in Olbia. Yes, sorry, in Olbia, which is near. Sorry. So it was found in Olbia and represents very clearly, as in the previous one, a female chorus now accompanied, or 2 members of a female chorus. I mean, we should imagine that the total number of the chorus members was 12 or 15. Probably 15, because this vase has been dated to 420 BC, accompanied by their aulos player, here the double reed, and also the leather straps that they used to wear in order to keep that double reed in the aulos in place and use it effectively, and possibly a boy that is an attendant, or I mean, we cannot be sure. Now, this is a hugely exciting find, not only because it is one of the very few undoubtedly theatrical representations of drama in the 5th century, but because it was found not now in the Greek West, but in the Greek East, so in the Black Sea, and it is one of the most intriguing and suggestive pieces of evidence for a theatrical culture in the Black Sea in the 5th century, about which, by the way, you can read the recent volume, Greek Theatre and Performance Around the Black Sea, edited by Edith Hall and David Brown and Rosie Wiles, which came out only in 2019. Now, apart from what we've already said about is kind of the female chorus. I mean, obviously, you should imagine that the actors that are shown underneath are male, okay, they're men. What is particularly striking and actually quite unparalleled is that the theatrical masks are here shown in white. And this is a suggestion. I mean, this is not only makes the mask kind of clearly visible, so it's a clear representation of a masked performance, but also the masks are probably corresponding to female, female choruses. Not all masks that we find on vase representations are painted white. Now, apart from these two vases, are vase paintings represent, as we said, a chorus in action during a dramatic performance. But we also have paintings of choruses and actors off stage, that is not during a dramatic performance, but still with costumes and masks, just not during the play, but just having been taken off after a production or about to be put on for a production to start. One beautiful example, unfortunately found in a very fragmentary state, is this Attic crater found also in the Greek West, in Tarentum or Taras, attributed to the same painter who drew the Pronomos vase, about which I will speak in a minute, and dated around also the same time, that is 400 BC. Now, this is a female chorus. Again, you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members of the chorus holding their masks. The masks here are shown in white. However, here you can't see the mask clearly being worn. So this person who is wearing the mask here has been fused with the mask. Okay, we will see a clear example of that in relation to the Pronomos vase. You also see here the aulos player, okay, the double reed, the musician who used to play the music during performances, and this time the aulos has been kind of split in two, and the auletes is holding them in either hand. Now, if we go on to, I mean, this is, as we said, this is an example of a vase painting by the same person who painted the Pronomos vase, which is actually the most famous of these offstage scenes that feature theatrical choruses, and in this case also actors. Now, this is the Pronomos vase. You should imagine it as a very tall kind of vessel of about, 75 centimeters height, and it is dated again in the same period as the previous vase that we saw. So, I mean, let's look at it a little bit more closely. I'm going to move my video here. So what is the Pronomos vase? It's basically the representation of a victorious chorus. Okay, victorious because we see the crowns and fillets that decorate the heads of the chorus members, and also the choregic dedication, about which we will talk in a minute. It's a victorious chorus after the end, so off stage now, not during a performance, after the end of the performance of a tragic tetralogy. Okay, and I'm saying tragic tetralogy, although the chorus members are dressed in satyr drama costumes. And I'll explain why I'm saying this. First of all, let me carry on a little bit with the kind of victory elements. You'll see, I said kind of the ribbons, and also the victory tripods up to here. This is a victory tripod, which is a choregic dedication, so a dedication by the sponsor of the tragic, by the winning sponsor of the tragic tetralogy, which was set in the polis for everyone to see and admire and praise the victory. Now, I said, kind of, the costumes, although this is a tragic tetralogy, are satyr drama costumes. And here I have to remind you that Greek tragedies were produced in the great Dionysia of Athens, but possibly also in other festivals, in trilogies, so 3 tragic plays, one after the other, and they were complemented at the end with a shorter play, which featured a chorus of satyrs. Satyrs were half human, half animal creatures of ancient Greek imagination that were very closely connected to Dionysus and the Dionysiac. Now, satyr dramas were usually mythological parodies, and the main feature was, that they have this satyr chorus. Now, what it's important for us to understand here is that, and remember, is that the chorus, the same chorus that played, the same chorus members that acted in the first 3 tragedies of the tragic tetralogy, would also act as the chorus members of the satyr drama at the end. So these people here are at the end of a long performance of 4 parts, which included 3 tragedies and 1 satyr drama, and this is now their final costume. Okay, these traditional shorts, I mean, they're called the boxers, with a phallus. That is the traditional way to represent satiric costumes. So often this is used as kind of relevant to satyr drama, and of course it is, but we should not forget that in the majority of cases, although not in the Lenaea, performances of tragedy were closed with a short mythological parody with a satyr chorus. So any tragic production in this context closed with a satyr drama, which was a reaffirmation in many ways of the Dionysiac element, which is extremely important and at the heart of the theatrical experience. Now, what else do we notice? We notice here, I mean, that if we count them, that we have 11 chorus members, and most of them, as you can see, are just holding their masks. which kind of to us reminds of a dedicatory of a dedicatory gesture. However, we have one who is wearing this mask, and in this case, as we can see from his kind of body language, he's in the middle of dancing. So, so when this person is wearing the mask, immediately he becomes transformed into the character that he's supposed to be. I mean, this of course doesn't mean that we cannot hold on to our assumption that this is a celebration after the end of the celebration of a victory at the end of a dramatic festival. But in this case, the fact that what we are conveyed is that the mask, the power, the Dionysiac power of the mask, that has the power to transform, to turn this actor into a kind of a Dionysiac player. Now, other important things I want you to notice here: the poet, and he has his name here inscribed, Demetrius. Actually, most of the chorus members also have their names inscribed next to them, although that most of these names, if you read them, they're probably not they're probably fictional names, because they're speaking names. Most of them have references to victory, so Nikephoros or Unicus, or so something to do with Nike or Nike or victory. I will talk to you why this is why these names are probably fictional. But for now, let's look at the representation of the poet Chorodidaskalus with the name Demetrius. And unlike the others, he does not have a costume, which shows that he's extra dramatic. Okay, but he's portrayed in heroic nude, and the heroic nude in the conventions of Greek art is the highest possible form of representation, or as we would say, I mean, here it's almost like he is the equivalent of a business suit. Okay, so it is actually very honorable that he's shown in the heroic nude here, the poet, or Chorodidaskalus. Please do not perceive him as just the poet, as in somebody who only composes, but as we know, the poets of Greek dramatic performances were involved in the training of the chorus, which they often did themselves. So he is also an insignificant part of the life and the identity, of the chorus in this situation. We also notice another member who is related to the chorus, the aulos player, Pronomos. You can see here the double reed. He is also in costume, as we saw the other aulos players in the other vase paintings that we saw. And also, the third person to the left of the aulos player, another person in heroic nude in a business suit, holding a lyre, that is a stringed instrument, who is called Charinos. Now, who is this Charinos? As you can imagine, there is huge scholarship and arguments about who this Charinos might be. But again, scholars are leaning towards the explanation that Charinos represents actually the sponsor, so the choregos of this winning dramatic chorus, and the fact that he's carrying a lyre. As we know, stringed instruments, lyres, were not used in dramatic performances, so and the fact that he's not in costume means that he's not from within any play. It's just a sign that he's a cultured citizen. Okay, so what we gather from now, as we've seen the majority of figures here, we've seen that there is a huge emphasis on the representation of the chorus. So it is the end of a dramatic, it's the end of a tragic performance, a winning one, as they found out after the end of the dramatic festival, the end of kind of the announcement of the judgment. And the emphasis is on the chorus and chorality, the music and the chorus. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention, you know, this particular player here is in a different costume, but he still holds the mask of a satyr, which probably suggests that he is a little bit kind of different from the rest of the 11 players, 11 chorus members shown here. Most probably he is chorus leader. Now, maybe he's, I don't know, or maybe he's gone back into his kind of everyday clothing. I don't know. So as we said, we have 11 chorus members instead of 15, okay, including a chorus leader with inscribed names. We said that they're probably fictional because they all have a reference, almost all of them have a reference to the word Nike, victory. Okay, they all hold, almost all of them, not all of them, hold masks, which evoke victory dedication, and they all wear victory garlands. We haven't finished, because apart from the chorus members, we also have actors. Okay, we have this one, which is a representation of Hercules, who is a very, very favorite character of satyr dramas. Okay, and then we have the person here, the character here, who is holding a mask of a Paposilenos or a Silenus, you know, again, a standard figure of satyr dramas, not a part of the satyr chorus, but very much close in association with a satyr chorus, holding his mask. And then, so Heracles, Silenus, and finally this tragic character here. You can see that it is a tragic character because of the long robes and the mask, who I'm not sure who they really are or they're supposed to represent. Apart from them, we have this female figure here who is holding a white mask, showing that this is a female character. The representation of Eros or Imeros here. And finally, the king, the divine king of drama, Dionysus himself, in kind of reclining, almost as if in a symposium, with a female companion who, according to some scholars, is Ariadne. Now, I didn't say, I mean, again, you can perceive the role of Dionysus and kind of as being in relation to the celebratory nature of this scene. What this person here has also been very much studied, and there's a lot of kind of scholarship about who she is, but one of the most interesting suggestions is by Edith Hall, who argues that this female figure who holds a mask is actually a personification of Tragodia. I mean, all of these arguments are interesting, but in cases like these, it's not possible to say. Another element that is kind of quite Dionysiac and kind of shows that this is a celebration of the victory of a tragic chorus, of a tragic tetralogy, with an emphasis on the kind of the Dionysiac essence of the dramatic festivals. It are also these circles which are supposed to represent tympana, that are percussion instruments that are very important, very central in a Dionysiac cult. Now, and one final thing, that okay. What else? Let me see. Okay, yes. So the god Dionysus himself and a female companion, yes, are also taking part in the victory celebration. Now, what is this vase for? Okay, why? Okay, we have the representation of the winning chorus of a tragic tetralogy. I mean, there's a lot of emphasis on the victory, also reflected in the names of the performers. Why might this be? I mean, it was found in a tomb, like almost all the vases that we find, and the funerary relationship of the illustration has been very much searched and written about. So on one hand, what we kind of need to point out is that kind of the strong Dionysiac element that this vase painting exudes and the connection to the theater. And I'm saying a strong Dionysiac connection because if you look at the whole vase, the side A is outside the theater, is a mythological representation of Dionysus and his companions. So there is a strong kind of Dionysiac theme here. But the fact that the vase was found in tomb has been associated by many scholars with its function as, I mean, the possible evocation of a mystic context. Now, if it was a dedication for somebody, for a dedication to accompany an illustrious person in death, the fact that it may recall the Dionysiac spirit and Dionysiac celebrations is quite important because of its connections with the promise of the afterlife and the promise of having a blissful life in the other world. I mean, the element of victory also has been interpreted as kind of life is an agon, life is a struggle, and this person that we dedicate this vase for themselves became victorious out of this struggle of life. And you know, this vase that celebrates his life as a struggle, as a victorious struggle, will accompany them. And of course, it shows that the family and the person themselves were very much interested in the theater culture. Now, as you can imagine, I mean, and I've been speaking now for such a long time, I hope you can press pause and go and have a cup of tea. But as you can imagine, vases like these that are so full of references and full of information have been exhaustively studied. And these are some of the these are the contents actually of a book that came out in 2008, again, you know, edited by Oliver Taplin and Rosie Wiles, The Pronomos Vase and Its Context. I summarized some of the arguments made in this book, but if you are interested in any chapter, even for your own interests or for kind of some very good student, feel free to write to me and I'm happy to send you any of the chapters here. Now, in the meantime, when just as a hint, like, you know, sometimes in order to check the contents of a book, a rather long book and a rather complex book, one thing I like to do, and many of my colleagues like to do, is we read a couple of book reviews, and we get a very good idea of the contents of the book before you go into before you go into its contents. And I would also recommend to you to use book reviews if you want to kind of find out more. Now, okay, so leaving the pronomos vase behind us for a minute, or for now, although I'm happy to answer questions, and going to the book that I mentioned by Oliver Taplin, Pots and Plays. So this book, again, I am happy, and I will provide you with scanned copies of some analysis of some vases, explores the relationship between iconography and vase painting in vases from the Greek West, and also assesses, and that's actually quite important in what this book does, how far each example is informed by or inspired by specific plays. Okay, so the argument in this book is that whilst these representations of these kind of dozens of vase paintings that Oliver Taplin is exploring are not illustrations of Greek drama per se, as Trendle and Webster would have it, and that as artworks themselves, okay, they have artistic value on their own accord, and they have their own codes in which they create meaning, and therefore independent value. Their referentiality and depth are augmented by the fact that they can be related to a specific play. So we don't have, it's not a list and analysis of photographs of performances or detailed illustrations of what a play is supposed to have looked like in performance, but they are kind of artistic creations whose meaning is augmented in reference to specific plays. So these paintings are not pictures of plays, okay, and thus display no sense of obligation to be faithful to the detail of the texts. Again, we see this in a spectrum, okay, so we saw that especially comic paintings, as for example, Virgil Telephus, the painter can be really excited about, showing a relevance with a specific production, but others are, especially paintings that are related to tragedy, are just portrayals of myths, as developed largely via the overwhelming impact of tragedy in shaping stories. Because by this time, the 4th century BC, myth was largely shaped by its representation on the stage. Now, among these, as we said, some choose to be more theatre specific, like the Capodarso Oedipus that you also have in your OCR list, or the Cleveland Medea that you also have in the OCR list, and others less so. Okay, like possibly the much earlier Maenads Tamnas by the Dinos painter, which you also have in your OCR list, where the sparagmos of Bacchus, of Pentheus, is represented, and which could be related to our Euripides' Bacchae, but also it could be related to the many Bacchae plays about which I will speak in a minute, of the early 5th century, but does not have to. Okay, so it is an artistic representation of the myth. It could be related to a tragedy, but it does not have to. So, okay, let's look at a couple of examples from this book by Oliver Taplin. One of them, which I'm happy to give you if you don't have it already, is the Capodarso Oedipus. and see how he presents it here. Closely related to Sophocles' Oedipus the King. He refers to this vase painting in this manner, reflecting the scene with the old Corinthian Oedipus and Iocaste, okay, and Jocasta. And then kind of the data that make the identification of this painting possible, and an analysis, which I'm happy to give you, but and what I picked out from this analysis is that this vase is especially telling, not only because it gives a striking evidence about costume and gesture, but also because it picks this powerful yet unmelodramatic scene. The work supposes quite a subtle appreciation on the part of the viewer. By showing Jocasta's wordless moment of horror, it surely appeals not to someone who has read the play, but to someone who has seen it in performance. And here Oedipus refers in particular to this gesture that Jocasta does in veiling her face and trying to veiling her face in shame as she realizes that Oedipus is actually her son. I'm going to be a little bit more detailed about this, because this is a vase that you have not been given in your in the list, which is a painting that Oliver Taplin connects with Sophocles' Oedipus, or the story of Sophocles' Oedipus, the king, or Antigone. Okay, indeed, he says it is possibly related to Sophocles' Oedipus. Now, in this scene, we see an old man, okay, with, I mean, most probably represented as blind, with kind of a long ceremonial formal robe and a stick, accompanied by a boy attendant, being received as audience of this kind of younger but younger but also formal looking man, although I mean he does look formal, but although he could have looked even more so, who is holding also a stick, but also a, what's the word, okay, so a scepter, that shows kind of his official role. Now, about this scene, what Taplin is telling us is that this is a scene that, since you have read the Oedipus King, you can definitely relate it to the scene where Tiresias is, and the boy, the blind Tiresias and the boy are received by King Oedipus, who is in suspense here, waiting to hear for an advice from the prophet. However, this is also a scene that those of you who have read Antigone can also be recognized as a scene in Antigone, with Creon receiving again Tiresias as a kind of, you know, expecting his advice about, you know, what's happening in the city. And also, he even relates it to the Phoenician women, Euripides' Phoenician women. So it is essentially, it is a scene that presents an old man. I mean, this is almost certainly it's an old prophet. It's Tiresias, and the king, who can either be Oedipus or Creon, so depending on your background, you as the viewer will read this painting in the way that speaks to you, regardless of I mean, it is always best, of course, if you recognize the theatrical connection to these plays or possibly other plays. But it is not necessary to recognize which play it is from. Or, I mean, the painter themselves may be playing with your perception here, may be quizzing your memory or your understanding. You certainly have satisfaction drawn from the fact that you can recognize a play, but this, of course, does not stop you from just recognizing that this is a scene from a performance, and you can relate to it in this kind of different manner. You may only recognize the theatricality of it, or you may recognize the specific plot. So he says, yes, I conclude that we have a general Tiresias and the king scene rather than a specific narrative, which makes an interesting contrast with the specificity of the Capodazzo painting that we saw earlier. Another painting that I chose to show you, because I see that you haven't received it in your list, is this kind of rather clumsily drawn fiale, which is possibly related to the account of Pentheus's death in the version of Euripides' Bacchae. Again, this is like the previous, is from the middle of the 4th century. It's exhibited actually in the British Museum at the moment. Now, let me, as I said earlier in relation to the vase that you have been given by OCR, we have many representations of Pentheus's death. Only that in almost all of them, apart from this one, Pentheus is presented looking like a man, and also as rather than, you know, and there is no suggestion of any kind of female identity. Also, there is no suggestion in any of the other theatrical, in any other of the vases that relate to the myth of the Bacchae, that there is a theatrical connection. Now here, what we see is the Maenads, okay, as we can see in the other vase paintings, attacking another Maenad here in the middle, who is also holding the same thyrsus as they are. Only that, notice that these ones are barefooted, whereas this one is wearing boots, which is a clearly very clear indication that this representation is related to the theater. So this Maenad, in other words, is in costume. I mean, okay, I mean, the other ones could have been, you know, also in costumes, but, you know, but they're not. Now, this one, the fact that she's in costume reminds us, or pays extra emphasis, extra attention on the fact that there is a costuming scene in the Bacchae. Okay, and also, okay, so maybe one objection that somebody may have is that this person who is now, according to what I'm saying, is supposed to be the Pentheus disguised as a female Maenad among the Maenads, the fact that they are not on the tree and they're not, you know, they're not being attacked on the tree. However, I mean, the representation of the tree here is very clear as kind of part of this setting. So these two particular elements, and especially the boots, give us kind of, I would say, quite a clear indication that this is meant to evoke the theatre. Of course, the death of Pentheus in the Bacchae is not acted on stage, it is narrated. Nevertheless, we know that several of these messenger scenes appear on theatrical related bases, and in this case this may be the case, but the artist in this case made the additional effort of adding the theatrical elements of the tree as a prop, and the boots as a part of the costume, in order to convey the fact that what I'm drawing here is meant to be appreciated in relation to the theatre. Okay, so with this I kind of close my discussion of this question. Other sources that you can use in reference to myths that are related to the theatre, okay, but not only the theatre, it includes the Lexicon Iconographico Mythologiae Graecae, or LIMC, which happily is digitized, and it is freely available for everyone. So I went to the website and I put kind of Pentheus, and I was given quite a long, very interesting list of representations of Pentheus. But most of them, apart from this one, most of them, as we said, or almost all of them, apart from this one, are not clearly related to the theatre, but they could, depending on where the viewer is coming from, be related to a certain play. Okay, so I'm going to close this here, and I will record one more session and post both of them for you to attend. Thank you for your attention.